The manuscript arrived to me in a yellowed, unmarked envelope. Inside were typewritten pages on paper, already aged by time, along with a handwritten note. I found this among my uncle's belongings after his passing. He served as a translator at the Vatican for 42 years. He never spoke of its contents, but insisted I send it to someone who could understand. Your name was mentioned. There was no signature, only a symbol I recognized at once, the same one that appeared on the documents I had been investigating for years. What follows is my full translation of that document. I decided to share it after confirming certain historical coincidences that convinced me of its authenticity. Some names have been changed for security, others I have kept intact to preserve the truth of these events. I do so aware of the risks. The first time Francis Forgione, later known as Father Pio, felt the weight of what he would call ancestral presences was as a child in Pietrelcina, Italy. It was not like the visions of saints he would later report to his superiors, but something primitive and unsettling, a sense of being watched by eyes that existed before language. This detail appears in no official biography. In 1916, as Europe burned in the fires of the First World War, Father Pio wrote in his personal diary about recurring dreams of luminous creatures speaking impossible languages. Those pages were later removed from his official archives. That same year, 3 children in Fatima began to report visions the Church would catalogue as Marian apparitions. A temporal coincidence few investigators have noted, but one that would prove crucial decades later. Father Pio first arrived in the Vatican in January 1922 at the summons of Cardinal Raphael Meri del Val, who had heard rumors of the Capuchin friars' strange powers. The meeting lasted less than 20 minutes. Del Val emerged pale and ordered. Pio returned immediately to San Giovanni Rotondo. The next day, Pope Benedict XV fell ill suddenly and died within days. No official link was ever made, but in the Holy See's secret archives, there is an autopsy report with a marginal note: left eye. Father Pio's stigmata appeared officially in 1918, but few know that the first marks emerged after an incident in the monastery's underground corridors, where he claimed to have been lost for hours in a passage that, according to the building's blueprints, did not exist. 2 monks found him unconscious, murmuring words in Aramaic, a language he had never formally studied. The true story, however, begins in September 1947, when Pio was called back to the Vatican. The post-war world had ushered in a new global order, and the Church sought to redefine its role. In the vaults of the Vatican Apostolic Library, a team of archaeologists uncovered a sealed passage during restoration work, something absent from any architectural plan for the last 4 centuries. Monsignor John Montini, who years later would become Pope Paul VI, personally oversaw the exploration. When the passage was finally opened, it revealed a spiral staircase descending far below the known catacombs. The walls were inscribed in a variant of Sumerian that no expert could fully decipher. Translated fragments mentioned watchers and sons of heaven. Father Pio was summoned not as a priest, but as a sensitive. The Vatican has long maintained a small group of clergy with inexplicable talents to investigate phenomena science, and cannot catalogue what occurred during the 72 hours Pio spent in those lower levels was never officially recorded. The only accounts come from notes by Cardinal Alfredo Ottaviani, prefect of the Holy Office, and a diary kept by Sister Josephine, a Belgian nun who served as Montini's assistant. As Father Pio descended, the temperature plunged dramatically, despite moving closer to the Earth's core. Physicists consulted later could not explain the anomaly. On the 3rd level, the team found an octagonal chamber with angular symbols carved into what appeared to be obsidian, a volcanic glass not native to the region. At the chamber's center stood a cylindrical structure of unknown metal, rising from floor to ceiling. It bore no visible seams or welds, as if cast in a single piece. When Father Pio approached, witnesses say the wall inscriptions glowed with a bluish light, and the cylinder emitted a low-frequency hum that induced nausea in everyone present. Sister Josephine wrote, "The Father touched its surface and immediately fell to his knees. His face changed, no longer the gentle man we knew, but something primal. He spoke in a tongue I felt was older than any known civilization. Then, in perfect Italian, he said, 'They never left. They only changed form.'" In the following days, technical teams were sent to study the site. Electrical instruments failed inexplicably. Magnetic tape recordings erased themselves. Photographs showed only blurs or, in some cases, elongated, figures not present when the shots were taken. An Austrian physicist on the team vanished overnight, leaving only notes referencing non-Euclidean geometries and quantum resonance portals. After this incident, access was restricted by direct order of Pope Pius X. Records indicate the pontiff visited only once, accompanied by Father Pio and 3 cardinals. What they saw remains a mystery, but in private correspondence between Pius X and US President Harry Truman, there are mentions of non-human entities and ancient technology. Father Pio returned to San Giovanni Rotondo profoundly changed. His already fragile health deteriorated rapidly. Letters between him and his confessor, Father Benedict Nardella, reveal a man tormented not only by physical pain, but by visions that challenged his faith. In a letter dated February 1948, he wrote, "What I saw were not demons, as our theology understands them. They were far older. They dwell in the spaces between stars since before time. The Church has always known. Fallen angels are not what we think. If you have followed this account so far, know that many more hidden truths remain. Subscribe to continue receiving these confidential documents few dare to share. Truth cannot stay in the shadows." In spring 1949, an underreported event occurred. 3 children disappeared near Father Pio's monastery. They were found 3 days later, physically unharmed but unable to speak. When they finally regained their voices weeks later, their stories were identical. They had followed a man with wings of light into a cave where ancient people slept in shining cylinders. Local authorities attributed it to collective trauma, but the Vatican discreetly sent an investigator. That investigator, Father Salvatore Moretti, was an expert in linguistics and ancient folklore. His recordings of the children's interviews went straight to the secret archives. A partial transcript, recovered years later, shows they described symbols identical to those in the Vatican's underground chamber, despite never having been there. In October of that same year, astronomical observatories worldwide recorded unexplained gravitational anomalies, particularly intense near Rome. Declassified U.S. Army documents mention unidentified aerial activity over Vatican City for 3 consecutive nights. Pope Pius X ordered prayer vigils without explanation. Meanwhile, Father Pio began receiving visits from a man calling himself the Observer. Described as tall, with perfectly symmetrical features and impossibly blue eyes, he arrived, unannounced, and was never stopped by security. Their conversations took place behind closed doors, and after each, Pio retreated in silence for days, speaking to no one. A young seminarian, Charles Bennett, overheard fragments of one such meeting. In his diary, he wrote, "The visitor spoke in a strange cadence, as if our language were new to him. He mentioned cycles and returns. He said they had been among us for millennia, observing and sometimes intervening. Father Pio asked if they were angels or demons. The man smiled and said, 'Those are human terms for forces you don't comprehend. We are the watchers.' Some remained faithful to the original mission. Others had different interests." In 1950, the Vatican resealed the passage to the mysterious chamber. Reinforced concrete mixed with special metal alloys was used, and the site was consecrated in a ceremony not following traditional Catholic rites. Only 7 attended, including the Pope and a scientist from the Manhattan Project. Documents note that holy water was combined with a radioactive isotope for the ritual. Over the next decade, Father Pio's ministry in San Giovanni Rotondo continued to flourish. His reported bilocations, being in 2 places at once, puzzled even his harshest critics. Few knew this ability intensified after his encounter with the underground cylinder. In 1957, a team of doctors sent by the Holy See examined Father Pio extensively. Their findings were never published, but one physician, Dr. Lawrence Bianchi, left medicine and retired to an alpine monastery. Before vanishing from public life, he wrote to a colleague at the University of Bologna, "His body is not entirely human. His cellular structure defies current biological understanding. The stigmata are not wounds in the conventional sense. They are openings to something I cannot describe scientifically." The observer continued his visits. In 1962, during the Second Vatican Council, these visits grew more frequent. Coincidentally, this was when UFO sightings peaked over Rome and its surroundings. A secret Italian Air Force report, released in 1998, documents objects materializing from nothing and vanishing without a trace on radar. One of Father Pio's closest confidants then was an American priest, Father Thomas Kerrigan, who served as his informal secretary and translator. Kerrigan kept meticulous notes of the stigmatized friar's teachings and personal observations. A revealing entry reads, "He no longer sleeps. He spends nights in prayer, but not the prayers we teach. He murmurs words in tongues as old as time." When I asked to whom he addressed them, he replied, "To those who came before and those yet to come. They exist outside our time, but interact with it." In 1968, Father Pio's health collapsed. Doctors could not explain the simultaneous failure of multiple organs lacking specific pathologies. It was as if every cell in his body decided to stop functioning at once. A specialist secretly consulted by the Vatican wrote, "On the night before his death, Father Pio received one last visit from the observer. Witnesses say a brilliant light shone from his room, visible even from outside the monastery." Father Kerrigan, alone in the room that night, later wrote, "The visitor leaned over the bed and spoke words that made Pio smile for the first time in months. Then he touched his forehead with 3 fingers and an indescribable light pulsed between them. Pio whispered, 'My brothers will return when the cycle completes,' and then fell silent. The visitor turned to me and said, 'He is not dying. He is transforming.'" The next morning, September 23, 1968, Father Pio was pronounced dead. His body, defying all medical expectations, showed no signs of decomposition in the days before his funeral. The stigmata he bore for 50 years had vanished without a trace. What few know is that before burial, a Vatican medical team conducted examinations. Tissue samples were sent to labs in 3 different countries. Their confidential results suggested fundamental DNA alterations, impossible to occur naturally in a human being, according to a consulted geneticist. Father Pio's coffin was lined with a metal alloy similar to that of the underground cylinder. His tomb was sealed with rituals blending traditional Catholic elements and ancient pre-Christian rites. In 1978, during Pope John Paul I's brief 33-day reign, attempts were made to reopen the investigation of the Vatican vaults. Documents show the pontiff requested access to files on Father Pio and the observer. 3 days later, John Paul I was found dead. The official cause was a heart attack, but a confidential report mentions unexplained marks that disappeared during embalming. In the decades that followed, sightings of strange lights over San Giovanni Rotondo became common. Pilgrims reported encounters with a levitating monk around the monastery at night. While most cases were attributed to suggestion or mass hysteria, some were officially investigated by civil and ecclesiastical authorities with no definitive conclusions. When Father Pio was canonized by Pope John Paul II in 2002, a curious incident occurred. During the ceremony in St. Peter's Square, photographers captured anomalous lights above the crowd. Later analyses could not explain them. Coincidentally, that night, observatories recorded magnetic disturbances in Earth's atmosphere. The Observer's manuscript, which reached me indirectly, complements this account. According to its pages, the beings Father Pio encountered were neither demons nor angels in the traditional sense, but ancient entities predating humanity. Some stayed, blending with humans to form hybrid lineages. Others departed to the stars, promising to return when the cycle completed. The cylinder in the Vatican vaults was a kind of dimensional anchor, a contact point between realities. Father Pio, owing to a rare genetic makeup, possibly from hybrid ancestry, could interface with the device and serve as mediator between these intelligences and humankind. His bilocations, stigmata, and other phenomena were manifestations of this interdimensional link. His physical body was gradually transforming to exist simultaneously on multiple planes. What was perceived as his death was in fact the final stage of that transformation. A troubling detail. The manuscript suggests Father Pio was neither the first nor the last. Throughout history, individuals with similar connections have appeared, some revered as saints, others as prophets or seers, depending on cultural context. Some were silenced when their knowledge threatened established power structures. In 2010, during renovations of Father Pio's crypt, workers reported tools disappearing and reappearing in different places, recurring power outages, and security cameras capturing voices when no one was present. Work was halted for 3 months without official explanation. An anonymous worker claimed to have seen Father Pio's coffin levitate a few inches off the ground for several seconds. His testimony was dismissed as a hallucination due to alleged toxic gases during excavation, although no tests confirmed this. In 2016, at Pope Francis's request, Father Pio's body was exhumed and displayed for public veneration. Officially, it was partially preserved, remarkable given the lack of special conservation techniques. What was not disclosed? Before public display, genetic specialists examined the remains. Their findings remain classified. Recently leaked U.S. military documents mention a joint Vatican project begun in 1975, codenamed Operation Vigilante. Its declared aim was to monitor and catalog non-human entities capable of interacting with our dimensional plane. An annex names San Giovanni Rotondo as Ground Zero, site of the first documented scientific confirmation of such beings. Evidence suggests the observer remains active. Sporadic reports of encounters with a man of impossible blue eyes surface around unexplained phenomena, often involving children who later develop unusual abilities or adults in moments of extreme spiritual vulnerability. The inscriptions in the Vatican's subterranean chamber, partially deciphered by modern linguists aided by artificial intelligence, reference a great cycle completing in the early 3rd millennium. One passage mentions the return of the watchers when the stars align again. In 2018, exactly 50 years after Father Pio's death, astronomers observed a rare celestial alignment, creating a gravitational corridor between our solar system and the galactic center. This coincided with odd electromagnetic surges around San Giovanni Rotondo and the Vatican. Pilgrims visiting Father Pio's tomb during this period reported extraordinary experiences: instant healing of chronic illnesses, shared visions among groups, and in some cases, communication with the saint himself. Church authorities maintained official silence but launched a discreet inquiry. The most recent documents I obtained, dated 2023, indicate the Vatican team monitoring the underground cylinder detected changes in its molecular structure. The surface, once impenetrable to all instruments, began showing porosity, allowing limited analysis. Microscopic samples revealed elements not catalogued in the known periodic table. Independent scientists have also noted fluctuations in fundamental physical constants, subtle shifts in gravity's strength and the speed of light in specific Earth locations, including San Giovanni Rotondo. These anomalies are temporary and localized, but increasing in frequency. The observer was last seen in December 2024, not by clergy or mystics, but by quantum physicists in a Swiss underground lab. According to unofficial reports, he appeared mid-experiment on quantum entanglement and said only, "The cycle nears convergence. He will return soon, along with the others. This time, there will be no separation between worlds." These fragments hint at a greater hidden truth. Powerful institutions work to keep this knowledge from the public, not necessarily out of malice, but from genuine fear of its repercussions. The story of Father Pio and the fallen angels, or watchers, as they call themselves, is but one chapter in a far larger narrative linking our reality to others we can scarcely fathom. As I conclude this account, I sense unusual movements around me. Perhaps coincidence, perhaps a consequence of this investigation. My intention is not to cause panic or undermine faith, but simply to shed light on information I believe vital to understanding our true nature and place in the cosmos. Questions remain. If Father Pio truly encountered beings religious tradition labels fallen angels, what does that mean for our understanding of spirituality and human history? If these entities are not supernatural but rather different, beings coexisting with us since time immemorial, how does that redefine reality? And perhaps most urgently, if this great cycle is indeed concluding, what will happen when these beings return fully to our plane? Are you prepared to reconsider all you believe about reality? The signs are around us, for those with eyes to see. Share your own experiences or observations. Perhaps together we can assemble this cosmic puzzle before it's too late.